Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by Lines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are kicking off this work week with a 7-game slate here. Some fun stuff to choose from. Not all of the best teams in the NBA are playing tonight, but we will still get into all this action for you guys. In this one, we're taking a look at what we think is going to be at least decent matchup here. Portland playing host to the Spurs. We're looking at some totals in this one. Also got another game video up and our player props. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page and follow along with us all season long. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where you can check out all of our great written content and use our odds finder tool. That's where we go ahead and give you guys the options there. All the US sportsbooks offerings so you can compare the best odds out there. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this 7-game slate and then talk about Blazers and Spurs.
Josh, the people don't care that much how entertaining it is as long as we deliver some winners.
Right.
And we've got some pretty good picks here for these late games. But yeah, I mean, it opens with Celtics -8 at Orlando. They had that weird back-to-back losses against the Magic, and they're down 3 guys, I think, Smart, Brogdon, maybe Rob Will, in this matchup. The Bucks expect to get Chris Middleton back. They're -11 at Detroit. Giannis also going to come back, it seems, after taking the last 12 days off to rest his knee. Memphis -5.5 at Houston, which has lost 13 straight. The Hawks in a pick'em at the Bulls. Spicy one there, 239 total. Also a 239 total in Utah. Charlotte +8 with LaMelo questionable. And then the 2 games we break down, I mentioned, Spurs are +8 at Portland, 241 total. And then we'll get to this one later. Memphis -1.5 at Sacramento with a 246 total. So, I mean, we're just going to focus on this one right here. And the Blazers on a back-to-back have lost 3 straight, have gone under in all 3. And we almost can guarantee that they can bounce back here against the Spurs team that's lost 7 straight road games, is missing either their best or second best player in Devin Vassell right now. Second best, you still got Keldon Johnson because Vassell's far more effective.
KJ,
but I mean, the Spurs defense has been abysmal, as we know in general, but especially on the road. I mean, they're allowing 129 in their last 7 roadies here with a 126 defensive rating. So that's why we have a 241 total, despite Portland's clear struggles on offense lately. I mean, outside of Dame Lillard, Simons finally came alive, hit 7 threes last night. They still only got to 112 against the Lakers, who we've been targeting as a team that's trending downwards in terms of their points and their pace. But Portland as well, playing at a slower pace. The last time they hosted the Spurs, 96.5 pace. The game totaled 227, despite Portland shooting 47%, hitting 15 threes. Despite 31 points from Jakob Poeltl, who's not necessarily repeating that. And if he is starting to go off, the Spurs will probably bench him so they can continue their tank job. And 21 from Vassell on efficient shooting. And again, he's out tonight. So Spurs, awful defensive numbers recently, but look at who they played. I mean, Memphis twice in a row on the road. The Knicks have been surging. The Nets, when they had KD, Shea, and the Thunder, and the Pelicans, who always seem to light them up. And with Portland, you got to look at the short rest and how they kind of respond to these issues. Not being able to score as much, I see their defense sparking more. I mean, they're allowing 107.5 on back-to-backs this year, 4 and 3 to the under. I'm surprised more of those haven't gone under. They certainly haven't had 240 totals. They're also 5 and 2 on back-to-backs. So I think they win this game, and I think they win it mostly with defense. I mean, there's just not a lot to worry about with the Spurs offense, especially Vassell out. They'll slow it down a little bit here, trust their half-court D. I think you can take Portland money line plus under, or you can tease it -4, and they get that total all the way to 245, which should definitely go under there.
Yeah, quick note about Devin Vassell. They definitely have a much, they're better and more efficient on offense, but without him, for some reason, they've been scoring a bit more in the 29 games that they've played with him. They've got 6 points less per game. I don't really do too much with that. I actually just supporting your argument Actually, I'm supporting my argument that KJ is more important for their team, but that's not really what we're talking about here. We are happy to take a lack of points on Portland. I do get scared with how bad San Antonio is on defense. Every time we talk about them or we bring up a player prop, involving a player that's going up against the Spurs, we just talk about how they're close to dead last in pretty much every single defensive category, if not dead last. And that continues to be the case, which is the only thing that you really get scared about. I mean, they've gone over in 14 of their last 17 games since early December right now, have the Spurs. They're scoring 117, they're allowing 123, and that's what you get scared of. I mean, I like taking an under on Portland on a back-to-back where they actually, they expended a lot of energy as the Lakers came back on them to win that game last night, as they scored 35 in the fourth, and Portland only had 21 in that quarter. They actually gave up 40 in the third as well to the Lakers. So they were hemorrhaging points to the Lake Show, who still were playing at a pretty normal pace, especially for them, not like fast, not nearly the 104 that we've seen them put up at times in terms of pace. So that just makes you scared on both sides. Like, both these teams can't really D up, and that continues to be the reason that Portland's definitely underachieving. The Spurs are probably achieving exactly where they want to be achieving, but 2-8 in their last 10 overall are the Blazers. 2-4 at home, 3-7 to the over. So they've got, under in 7 of those. There's some pretty high totals in there, pretty much like we've got here at about 241.5. But their offense has just been so bad. 44% from the field, 31 from deep, and that includes Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, and Dame all combining to shoot like 23 threes a game. They've only been making like 6 of them over their last 10, but they're also 24th in points in the paint. San Antonio allows the most points in the paint. They're 26th in second chance points. San Antonio allows the most second chance points. What we're saying here is San Antonio can't defend the paint or rebound. And even since Pirtle has come back over their last 8, that still continues to be the case for them. The one thing that the Blazers have been doing is getting to the free throw line a ton, as Dame's been scoring and getting there about 10 times a game or so, but second in free throw attempt rate. But the Spurs have been limiting free throw attempt rate, probably because they play a lot of Ole defense around the paint and don't foul you, and that's why they're giving up the most points. So I think there's a direct correlation there. But 9th in points off turnovers for the Blazers. The Spurs do get back a bit. Once again, they're giving up such a high percentage from the field that there's probably not too many transition buckets available for the Spurs, so I don't think you got to worry about that. So I think anywhere that you're not, neither of these teams are necessarily vulnerable in places that they're good, right? There's no glaring matchup where it's like, oh, if the Spurs don't get back on defense, the Blazers are going to run them to death. There's nothing like that. The Blazers are still scoring, shooting the three ball. It's such a bad clip for them that it's something that they clearly need and are going to rely upon when your backcourt is Dame and Anthony Simons. That's just what to expect at that point. So pace matters, but really it's just like shooting. And the Blazers have been down to a bottom 5 team in effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage. We know they continue to struggle from deep, like we said, other than Simons finally getting his shot last night, but still, right, like that wasn't even enough to get over 112. And then the Spurs, they're not shooting threes, and so there's no as long as the Blazers are sort of getting back in the event that they continue to sort of miss buckets, and they haven't been giving up points in transition, so I think they're fine there. Then I don't really know how the Spurs score on them. Definitely not in the half court, and I feel much better about a 241.5 under with a Blazers money line, because I just don't trust them at all right now. I think the Spurs could keep this within 8 points, but the Blazers pull it out at home.
Yeah, and in wins, the Blazers are allowing 109 this season. So, I mean, if you don't, and again, the back-to-back 107.5, they've now on 3 straight losses, kind of a backs against the wall situation where you expect them to D up, and they do have great defenders still. And so if you're having all these concerns about Portland in their last 10 being one of the 5 worst offensive teams, then, what scenario do you think, if they can lock up and hold the Spurs, who have been awful on offense in these games? 114.5, a 112 rating, but if it's played below a 100 pace, are they getting to 114? I don't think so. I mean, I think I could look at their team under if you are concerned because of how bad they are defensively, and because sometimes they don't even try on the road. So maybe if you are concerned about what we're talking about another up and down game, you just take the Spurs under, which is still pretty high here. And because most of the trends we're finding here is that the Blazers slow it down at home. They've slowed it down lately in their last 6 home games, playing at a pace of 96.5. that the Spurs cannot hit threes against them or really anyone. They don't get to the free throw line. And that the Blazers, their offense has been inconsistent. That's why I like the under in general. And even though everything you mentioned about the Spurs and how they've gone over in all these 17 games, still averaging 240. So they're not, as long as they don't go above average what they are, this total is just a tick too high. And there's definitely a scenario where they get shut down, kind of like when they went to Portland and they got 110, is not really going to carry you to an over.
Yeah, they shot so piss poor in that game. Did the Spurs and the Blazers? They scored that 128 because they were shooting way better. They played much faster than, as we've said, than they've been playing, especially at home. I mean, they've been playing with a 99 pace at home on the season, but even just in their last 5 or so, they've slowed it down all the way to the 19th fastest pace. They're still playing under 98, roughly around a 97.5 pace. And like you said, if you're playing at a 97.5 pace with the Spurs and they aren't getting 115 possessions, 110 possessions, then I don't know how the Spurs, like we said, get offense outside of just pushing, go. And the Blazers have been getting back enough and slowing it down enough that I think they'll be all right. So,
and then this one has the highest total on a high total night, scoring way up in the NBA, 246. Memphis on a back-to-back is -1.5 at Sacramento. And while the Kings are playing their third game in 4 nights, Memphis, of course, played last night, got down by about 30 in Phoenix, and then came all the way back, made it a 2-point game, and in fact, almost had a shot at the buzzer. They stole an inbounds pass, and then somebody just fell down instead of getting that shot off. But, I mean, the point is, for our purposes, they snuck under the under. I mean, they were going way under on Friday in that Lakers game. We absolutely nailed that one. Still snuck under the under, and they've gone under in 6 of their last 9 road games. I mean, that 11-game streak where 7 were at home, that's what we were talking about before the Lakers game. Different kind of splits, different kind of vibe for Memphis on the road, including just less efficiency in general on the road, but still in their last 9 road games, I believe the number 1 defensive rating. I mean, certainly number 1 paint points allowed on the season on the road, number 3 in defensive efficiency, 2-point percentage. The concern is that they are 23rd in 3-point D on the road when you face the Kings, right? That's a concern versus 6th at home. But in this matchup against the Kings, I mean, they've owned them. They've won 8 of their last 9 against the Kings, and you say, okay, well, this is a different Kings team. Well, in 3 with Sabonis, they've still held them to 33% from 3, still held them to 21 free throw attempts, which is well below the problem area Memphis had. It's kind of why they let the Lakers back in there. And they've held the Kings to 110 points per game, a 109 offensive rating, while winning those games, winning the rebounding battle pretty handily, again, despite Sabonis, who leads the league in rebounding. So in those 9 games against the Kings, holding the Kings at 107. And you look at the back-to-back here, after starting 0-2 on back-to-backs, they've won 4 straight, Josh. They've won, including against Sacramento, their last time they had a back-to-back on New Year's Day. And that was a 118-110 win in Memphis, where they tend to play faster, and it was during this streak. So they continue to go under as a road favorite. They're 16-10 to the under in conference, for what that's worth. But I do like Memphis to win here. And I like them to build on the momentum of that comeback and to attack Sacramento, which just hemorrhages points in the paint, the most in the league at home, just gave up 70 paint points to the Sixers without Harden and Embiid, and got roasted by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in their previous game. So going up against Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, who, by the way, they did not have to worry about the last 2 meetings this season, and he's cooking as well. I think they have a hard time stopping Memphis. And when they're underdogs, they do tend to go under. They also tend to lose 13-8 or 8-13, excuse me, as underdogs. So I do like Memphis here to carry that momentum forward and win. And if you feel like the 246 is too high, I think you can take the under. It is a bit scary because you never know when with 2 teams on short rest. Does that mean they're going to play Ole defense, or does that mean they're not going to have their legs and not be able to hit shots?
Yeah, that is a question. I mean, I do like the fact that these teams have gone so far under so often, right? Like in their the last four times that they've played, they haven't come close to this total. So I think you know there's something to be said for that. Like you mentioned, the last time that they played, love that 108 to 118 total there. I mean, the Grizzlies have been scoring about 119 against the Kings their last four times against them. The Kings haven't been coming along for the ride in a lot of those, and the pace that these teams have been playing at is at about like 100 over the last four times that they've been playing. Pretty much the exact same pace that this Memphis team has been playing at, when they've been going under as of late. So yeah, the points in the paint scares you whenever you talk about Sac playing against a team like Memphis, because that's just, what Memphis is going to do. And it's not like they have a guy backing anyone down with his back to the basket. It's Ja Morant crashing, and it's Jaren Jackson Jr. crashing, Steven Adams getting on the boards there, and even Dylan Brooks getting on the offensive rebounds at times. So they're long. They're very good around the rebound, around the rim on both sides, right? Especially on offense, where they continue to lead the league in things like second chance points, and they continue to get offensive rebounds. So the pace is what I look at. 247 points is just so much, man. And if you're going to play at about the 101 pace that these teams have been going at each other at, then I think there's something to be expected there. I would expect for the Grizzlies, talking about what happens when you're on short rest or no rest, and how does that affect your pace? Well, I mean, they're 2-3, really 2-4 to the under. To the over, right? They've gone under in 4 of 6 on no rest this season, failing to get to the total by about 6 points in each of those on average. So like there's something to be said for that. I think that is a trend that you can follow for the fact that the way that they play is up and down like that. And at the very least, I would say coming out, they're either not going to have it at the beginning of this one, or they're not going to have it towards the end in terms of legs to continue that pace. And even, Sacramento probably is happy to be playing a little bit slower as well, as they've just been watching guards like SGA and Maxey just blow by them their last 3 games in 4 nights, like you said, after a back-to-back, and really close games, and ones that they've been playing against good teams. That OKC game was super tough for them, for sure, one that I'm sure that they feel like they should have won. But I guess at this point, for me, I'm just relying on what I know about when these two teams match up, and sort of the not only the pace that they play at, but the way that Memphis has been playing defense lately. I mean, over the last 10, they're the second best defense in terms of field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and everything else that they're allowing, in terms of mid-range, and all. If you look at all these sort of heat maps of where teams are scoring on them, it's like pretty much just inconsistent all over the floor. They're not really funneling you anywhere. They're just every single player locks up, and Ja maybe not as much, a little bit more of a turnstile, but that's why you have the team that you have around him to continue to beef that up. So 115 points a game that they're giving up in their last 10 or so for Memphis, which is really good right now in an NBA where the lowest total tonight is like 231.5 points, right? Like 247.5 is an absurd total. Just as absurd as that there's 7 games that a total is at least 231 points. And for Memphis, I think that they've been playing defense in a way that if you're limiting 3-point attempts to the way that they have, and limiting free throws, then it's hard to get to 240, 245 totals if you're not getting a ton of easy buckets and stopping the clock essentially. And that's what I would expect for them to continue against the Kings, to keep them from being able to come along for a 247 total.
Yeah, Memphis actually hasn't been limiting free throws, and they've been getting a lot of free throws, at least in this limited sample size. But the Kings are number one limiting free throws in their last 3. So that is the key. While they do give up a ton of paint points, on the flip side of that, at least we won't have a pace where you get those breaks for the free points with the clock stopped if you are taking the under. And the Kings are 14-6 to the under as underdogs here, slight dogs. But again, you come back to how are they playing? Just like I said in the Spurs game, they gone over in 7 straight road games. Kings have gone over in 7 of 8 home games against Houston twice, Lakers, Hawks, Orlando, and then shorthanded Philly. They go under in that game against SGA and the Thunder, who are 4th in defensive rating, I believe, in the last few weeks. And who's number 1? Memphis. And then Memphis's offense is just not the same on the road. We've seen them come out completely flat against the Lakers and Phoenix in the last 2. And they have a hard time dealing with Phoenix for whatever reason. Like even when they lost to the Suns without Paul or Booker right after Christmas. And so, I mean, coming out defensively and struggling against them the way they did. I don't know if that continues because they have defended the Kings very well. Like we're saying, they might struggle in 3-point defense against some teams, but they know how to close out on Sacramento shooters, which are easily identifiable, and I think that helps keep it low scoring.
Right. Yeah. You know who you're scared of shooting the 3 ball for this Kings team. And obviously it's Huerter and Keegan Murray at this point. But I think, De'Aaron Fox has struggled so much. He started okay, continues to struggle so much from deep. Harrison Barnes, inconsistent. I mean, consistently at 15 points, but you don't really know where he's going to necessarily be scoring from. So, yeah, I mean, Malik Monk's been getting more time. I think you'll see him on the floor here a bit more if Sac continues to struggle shooting from deep outside of those few guys. And like I said, Memphis is going to help you do that with their defense. And that's kind of what I'm relying on. Their struggles on the road on offense, the way these teams have played in their pace, and the fact that I think we're getting a little bit of overvalue on this total just because of who these teams have been, or specifically who the Kings have been playing lately, which is all of the teams that are at the bottom of the league in defense and top in pace. So, Nate, let's go ahead and jump into your first one for Monday night slate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is the most confident one, but I think you can get ahead of this with Giannis coming back after 12 days off, resting his knee. I mean, his prop is at 28.5 points, and Caesars gives you -111. You can go up to 29.5 and get better odds. But I mean, what was he at, like 33.5 consistently before he rested that knee? He had a couple quiet games. I think you can blame the knee soreness. And then Drew Holiday been killing it in his absence. Chris Middleton might play tonight for the first time in a while. So, but I mean, the Bucks still know where their bread is buttered. And I mean, this is just such an easy matchup to knife through the Pistons defense. He scored 30 plus in 5 straight against Detroit. And that's in just 31 minutes per game. And actually the public seems to think Detroit can cover at home here. Money coming in on Detroit plus 11. So if it is close, more power to him. This is a Detroit defense that allows the highest 2-point percentage to opponents, allows the second most paint points, second most points overall. And obviously Giannis has had his way. So I think it's just an opportunity to capitalize because we haven't seen it in a while, but we can, I remember looking at those numbers and saying, oh, when Giannis gets at least 2+ days of rest, what happens next? Well, that was prior to his insane lines against the Bulls, like 44-23. He had 3, I think, insane lines in a row when he got a little extra rest. So I think he comes back from the knee soreness here and puts up his usual big line.
Yeah, I don't hate it because Detroit and Giannis, and that's all I need to know. I don't love picking him coming back unless, I guess I don't know enough about, has he been ready to play for a little bit and just hasn't been to keep him out because, like you said, Drew's been playing pretty well. They went through a stretch, just a couple games in a row where they played the Pacers and Raptors before the Cavs last game. Maybe you don't bring him back for any of those and you bring him back for this easy one, but I'm just scared of taking a player I haven't seen in a while. Like you said, you're kind of getting ahead of it because of taking advantage of the fact that maybe people don't want to bet on Giannis because of the fact that they haven't seen him in a while. But if this was 28.5 right before the injury, then yeah, without question, I would take that which is crazy that it's it's like 4 or 5 points too low for a Giannis total, at 28.5. But that's what it was before. And in this matchup, that's basically what it probably would have been at if he hadn't gotten hurt and was still playing at a similar torrid pace, is like closer to 32.5 points. So if you still believe he's going to come out in the same, capability, as he was before he got hurt, then yeah, I go ahead and hit the 29 points for sure on that one. I'm going to go ahead and move on to a guy who, man, this team is such a freaking mind mess, if you will. But Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks, 37 points and assists, so over 36.5 for him is what I would take here. -115 on DraftKings. They're playing the Bulls, also hemorrhage points, and you kind of expect this one to be high scoring, like the way most of Atlanta and Chicago's games have been in the course of the last few to 3 weeks. The last 3 versus Chi City, 31 points a game for Trae with 11 assists, about a 32.5% usage, looking at about 39.5 minutes per game. I believe there's an overtime or 2 in there as well. His last 9 on the road, road where they're playing, 26.5 or so, about 10 assists per game, just a tick under, but still that 31% usage and 36 minutes per game in that time. About 2.5 made threes on 41.5%. We started to see him pick up the amount of threes that he's shooting. So I think if you like the roughly 10 assists for him tonight to 11 assists, which I think is definitely fair, to get 26 points if he's going to be making hopefully about 3 threes tonight, I think that's the stat line that you look for in that sense. And I think there will be enough possessions tonight that you feel good about Trey getting his.
Yeah, it's a 239 total, and it's hard to imagine Trey not scoring at least 26 points in that type of environment. And then I really like the assists, I think, against the Bulls team that's not good guarding the pick and roll. And Trey has both his pick and roll partners back now, right? In Capella and Collins. And Vucevic, a guy he's being able to exploit, which is why you see 11 assists per game in the last 3 against the Bulls. So I think you put the two together, it should get over there in a high-scoring game. The Bulls play some crazy shootouts sometimes. So we're going to go to Orlando here and actually target the Celtics defense because Marcus Smart is not playing, Brogdon not playing, maybe Rob Williams doesn't play either. I mean, he's appears to be on a bit of a minutes restriction even when he does play. And, I mean, how much is Al Horford going to go on the road? I mean, we will see a lot of Luke Cornett, who's still a pretty good rim protector, but Peyton Pritchard is going to be out there a lot with no Smart Brogdon. And I mean, he's incredible in terms of his effort on both ends of the floor, but he is a limited defender in the NBA. So I'm looking at Markelle Fultz. And I think you want the whole package, the PRA at 21.5, because he is a really good peripheral stats guy. 12.5 points if you want it, sure. I mean, he is scoring 14 in his last 10, supplementing that with 6 assists and 4.5 boards to get you about 25 PRA per game. So I think the market is kind of undervaluing him because Boston can be a great defense, but without Marcus Smart, they just don't have that same kind of fire. Jaylen Brown's also playing through injury. Tatum had to miss a game with the wrist and wrist soreness. In any case, I mean, Boston is not going to be as fired up for this one after a close game with Toronto and that emotional win over the Warriors. In the last 15 days, they're giving up nearly 8 assists and 6.5 rebounds to point guards. So if you do just want the rebounds assists, you can get 10 peripheral stats at plus 112 at FanDuel for Fultz. So I think that's a little bit better juice since I am saying PRA, but let's trust the peripherals more. Why not just go with the rebounds and assists?
Yeah, I feel it. I think because of the fact that there's going to be a little bit easier to attack are the Celtics from the top. I think that's kind of why I like Fultz with points as well, to be honest. I think he's going to be coming right down the lane without a Marcus Smart. Maybe a Derek White obviously is taking him on a lot more at that point with enough size and a good defender as well in Derek White. But you would love to have Smart and Brogdon in this one. And if Rob Will is even on a minutes limit, that would also be why I would move on and talk about Wendell Carter Jr. here, because I was eyeing him. We're not, very easily both of these guys can get their props. I don't think there's any negative correlation here, but if anything, there's a positive correlation because we've got a ton of assists for Fultz. And then Wendell Carter Jr., I kind of like everything, like whatever you'd want to take for him. The points, rebounds, and assists is 24.5. That's minus 110, so it's pretty good odds. The points and rebounds are at 22.5 for him. That's even money. Even the rebounds and assists, as he's been diming up a lot lately, I like at about 10.5. For him to get that. That's minus 120 for him to get 11 rebounds and assists combined. I like all of it, just depending on how confident you are in the points or the juice that you prefer to have here. The last thing I would say is a double-double for him is plus 235, which I really like those odds. And I mean, he's been getting about 9 boards a game in his last like 10 games or so. But it's like 9.7. So for him to have plus 235 to get, the 10 points, I feel is pretty much a lock. The rebounds there at 10 is like the only thing you're a little bit worried about maybe, but I still, if you're going to get 2.5 to 1 on your money on that, basically I'm good with it. His last 4 versus Boston, 14 points a game, 12.3 boards, 4.5 assists. That's all in 35 minutes, which he hasn't been getting the minutes quite as much in his last roughly 10 games, but in the last 5 he's been coming back and getting those minutes back up above 30, closer to 32. He's been averaging 35 against the C's in the last 4 times he played them last season. 45% from the field on about 12.5 field goals goal attempts, and he only failed to get those double-digit rebounds once, where he got 8 against Boston. So the last 3 that he played, he's been on a big slump, to be honest, but I think this is a slump buster in that sense. And in the 7 games before that, he was averaging 16 points and 9 boards in just 29 minutes on 55-44 splits. So yeah, making about 1.5 threes a game as well. So the C's in their last 2 weeks have been giving up the 6th most rebounds to centers, the 10th most points. So I think there's some opportunity for Wendell Carter to kind of, at least get, let's say he gets the 9-10 boards at least. I think he's getting the 3 assists and then the points anywhere from 14 to 15. So I feel really good about all the stats for him tonight.
Well, I mean, interesting you call 10 points a lock the way he's struggled in his last 3. I mean, if you are going with the regression to the mean and say, no, he's not going to struggle for a 4th, then we can expect him to get 10 points because that's where he's been at before that. I mean, averaging 16 once he got healthy. So right. I think, it's more of a betting on him coming around and trying to get ahead of that. And I think, the points rebound seem good and the double-double seems good because Orlando, they just played Boston tough the last 2 times they met him. And if Boston's shorthand in the front court, expect Wendell and company to take advantage.
Totally, yeah. You talked about Vooch, by the way, and his inability to guard pick and roll. I bet they'd love to have Wendell Carter Jr. on that Bulls team try to defend Trey tonight. At any rate, that's all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. Check out the other couple game videos we have up for you today as well. And until we see you next, happy betting.